He was a single dad, broke, desperate for a new start, and today was supposed to be his first day at a job that could change everything. But instead of clocking in, he ran toward the sound of a child screaming. Why? What happened? And what does this have to do with the company owner watching everything unfold? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll realize that one moment can change your whole life, and someone might be watching when you least expect it. But first, if you've ever had to make a choice between what's right and what's expected, smash that like button so more people hear stories like this. And if you've ever been underestimated as a parent or worker, drop a comment below. We want to hear your story. And hey, if emotional, real-life stories are your thing, hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel is all about the power of everyday heroes, and today's story might be the most powerful one yet. Alright, let's go back to that moment. Jacob had just gotten his son ready for school. His shirt was half-tucked, he hadn't had coffee, and he was already running 5 minutes late for the most important job interview of his life. He kissed his son goodbye, told him to be brave today, because school had been tough lately, and rushed out the door. The bus stop was 3 blocks down. He had rehearsed what to say, practiced his answers, even printed out a resume at the public library. Today wasn't just a job, it was hope. But halfway there, everything changed. A scream. A car engine. A blur of movement. Jacob saw a little girl in the middle of the road, and a car speeding straight at her. In that instant, he knew, if he ran forward, he'd save her, but he'd definitely miss his first day at work. What would you do? Before we get deeper, think about this: how many times in your life have you been forced to choose between what benefits you, and what helps someone else? Now imagine you've got bills piling up, a child depending on you, and finally, a chance to turn it all around. Would you risk that for a stranger? That's exactly where Jacob was. He wasn't a superhero. He didn't have time to think. But he had heart, and sometimes, that's all it takes. And here's the crazy part: what Jacob didn't know was that someone important was watching the whole thing. Not just any bystander. Someone who could change his life forever. So before we dive into what happened next, hit that like button if you believe character matters more than credentials, and don't forget to subscribe, because this story is just getting started. Jacob wasn't just looking for a job. He was looking for redemption. After his wife passed away 2 years ago in a tragic car accident, everything fell apart. Bills piled up. Grief turned into exhaustion. And while he tried to stay strong for his son, Caleb, there were nights he cried himself to sleep on the couch, hoping tomorrow might finally get easier. He had lost his job shortly after the funeral. The company was downsizing, they called it bad timing. But to Jacob, it felt like the world was punishing him for something he couldn't fix. He tried everything: construction gigs, warehouse shifts, even delivering food. But nothing stuck. It was hard to be dependable when your heart's shattered and you're raising a kid alone. Caleb was only 8. Sweet, smart, but hurting. The school called multiple times about his behavior. Quiet, withdrawn, angry. Jacob knew the signs. His boy was grieving, and felt like the world had abandoned him too. That's why this new job meant everything. It wasn't just any job, it was a tech warehouse with benefits, a steady paycheck, and the chance to rebuild. Jacob had applied 3 times before finally getting an interview. And when he got the call, he smiled for the first time in months. But even more than the money, it meant routine. Structure. Stability. A schedule he could work around Caleb's school. A chance to be present again, not just physically, but emotionally. He'd even gone out and bought a new shirt from a thrift store. Ironed it. Practiced his smile in the mirror. Caleb said he looked like a boss. Jacob laughed so hard he nearly cried. The night before the interview, Jacob sat with Caleb, helping him with math homework. "If I get this job," he said, "we're gonna celebrate with ice cream every Friday. Deal?" Caleb's eyes lit up. "Double scoop?" "You bet." For the first time in a long time, it felt like something good was finally about to happen. But life has a way of testing you right when you think things are turning around. Jacob's plan was simple: drop Caleb at the school bus, walk 3 blocks to the bus stop, take the 7:15 into the city, arrive 10 minutes early, and ace the interview. No room for error. He even packed his resume in a Ziploc bag in case it rained. That's how serious he was. But deep down, he was terrified. Not of the job, but of the possibility that he'd fail again. That he'd walk in, mess up a question, say the wrong thing, and lose the only chance he had left. Still, he showed up for his son every day. He got him ready. He encouraged him. He made lunch with what little they had in the fridge. He kept moving, even when the weight felt unbearable. That morning, when Caleb tugged his hand and whispered, "You've got this, Dad," Jacob smiled, knelt down, and said, "I've got you too." And then he turned, and walked into the most important day of his life. What he didn't know was that it wouldn't go the way he expected, but it would change everything. Jacob's biggest fear wasn't just failure, it was becoming invisible. Another face in a crowd of struggling parents, trying their best and still falling short. He didn't want pity. He wanted a shot. Just one. And even though every rejection hurt, he never let Caleb see him break. Behind closed doors, he battled the weight of self-doubt, but in front of his son, he was a quiet force of hope. That morning, everything felt like it had to go right. But destiny had a different plan. Jacob's footsteps echoed against the sidewalk as he moved fast, trying not to run but feeling every tick of the clock tighten in his chest. It was 7:08. The bus stop was just ahead, but his nerves were already building. He went over the questions he thought they might ask. What are your strengths? Tell me about a time you solved a problem. He rehearsed the answers in his mind like lines in a play. He could do this. But just as he turned the corner, he heard it. A scream. High-pitched. Sharp. A child's scream. And then, rubber screeching on pavement. A horn. A man yelling. Tires spinning. Jacob froze. Across the street, no more than 50 feet away, a little girl, no older than 5, was standing alone in the middle of the road. A red ball rolled past her foot. And barreling down the hill was a gray SUV. There was no time. Jacob dropped his resume bag. No thought. No hesitation. His body just moved. He sprinted into the street, arms pumping, heart exploding in his chest. The driver was honking, brakes screaming, but it wasn't going to stop in time. Jacob lunged. He grabbed the girl in one arm and rolled. Hard. The SUV missed them by inches, clipping the edge of his backpack and sending it spinning down the road. The little girl burst into tears in his arms. Her mom ran out from a house screaming her name. Lily! Lily! Jacob sat up, dazed, chest heaving. You saved her, oh my God, you saved her, the woman cried, hugging her daughter and then Jacob, over and over. People had come outside now. A couple from the porch next door. A man with a coffee mug watching from his driveway. Everyone talking at once. But Jacob only saw one thing, the time. 7:16, his bus was gone. His heart sank. All the hope, the plans, the ice cream Fridays, all of it slipped through his fingers like sand. He stood up slowly, thanked the mother, nodded at the crowd, and walked to retrieve his resume, which now had tire marks across the cover page. One of the neighbors said, "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." Jacob forced a smile. Thanks. But in his mind, he was already replaying the phone call he'd have to make. The explanation he'd have to give. And the silence on the other end when they told him, "We moved on." He looked back once more at the girl. She was safe. Hugging her mom tightly. Crying. Jacob turned, hands shaking, and began the long walk back home, not knowing that someone across the street had filmed the whole thing. And standing behind that phone was the owner of the company he was supposed to interview with. And that man had just seen something no resume could ever show. Jacob crouched there for a few seconds longer, watching the child cling to her mother like life depended on it, and maybe it did. His knees ached, his palms were scraped, and adrenaline was still making it hard to breathe. The SUV driver stepped out, pale and shaking. "I didn't see her. She just ran out." "I swear," Jacob nodded, "she's okay. That's all that matters." The man nodded back. You saved her." But Jacob wasn't listening anymore. His eyes locked on the bus pulling away down the street, his last chance fading into the distance. He didn't blame anyone. There was no time to call ahead, no second chances on mornings like this. He did what he had to do. He did the right thing. Still, his shoulders slumped under the weight of disappointment. One win. One loss. And he wasn't sure which one would cost more. But not everything was lost. Jacob's walk home felt longer than usual. His shoes, slightly too tight, pressed against his heels with every step. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind soreness and that empty, hollow feeling that always follows disappointment. He thought about calling the company. Maybe they'd understand. Maybe someone would take his side. But he knew how that usually went. Everyone says they value honesty, until it inconveniences them. He reached for his phone and opened the number saved under "Job Interview." His finger hovered over the call button, but he stopped. What could he even say? "Hi, sorry I missed my interview. I was saving a child from being hit by a car." Even if it was true, it sounded made up. He sighed, slid the phone back into his pocket, and looked up at the cloudy sky. A drizzle had started, because of course it had. As he turned the corner to his block, a thought hit him like a wave: was it worth it? He knew the answer. Of course it was. But the pain of sacrifice always comes with doubt. He reached his apartment door, opened it quietly, and slipped inside. Caleb wasn't home yet, he wouldn't be for another hour. Jacob sat on the edge of the couch, staring at his hands. Calluses. Scars. Worn palms from years of work, hard work. Hands that had once held his wife's in the hospital. Hands that had now saved a little girl's life. And yet, they weren't enough to hold on to a job opportunity. That thought hurt. But he reminded himself, that girl would go home tonight. She'd laugh. Maybe cry a little more. Her mother would hold her tighter than ever before. All because he showed up, not at a job, but at the right place, at the right time. The front door creaked. Caleb was home. "Hey, Dad," he said, kicking off his shoes. "How'd it go?" Jacob paused, then forced a smile. "I was a little late." Caleb didn't ask why. He just nodded, walked over, and sat beside him. And in that quiet, Jacob realized something: his son didn't care if he wore a uniform or a name tag. He cared that his dad kept showing up. They sat together for a while, flipping through Caleb's school folder. But before long, the knock came. 3 times. Firm. Purposeful. Jacob opened the door, expecting a neighbor, or worse, a landlord. Instead, there stood a tall man in a navy suit, holding a phone in his hand. "You're Jacob, right?" the man asked. "Yes. My name's David. I'm the owner of Lark Tech. You were supposed to have an interview with us this morning." Jacob's eyes widened. I'm so sorry. I was on my way and," David raised a hand. "I know. I saw everything." Jacob blinked. "You, what?" David turned the phone toward him and hit play. There it was. The footage: Jacob sprinting into the street, grabbing the girl, rolling out of harm's way. Every second captured. "My niece lives on that street," David said. "I was dropping off some tools for my brother when I saw you run. I didn't know who you were, until someone mentioned your name." Jacob didn't speak. He couldn't. "I've done hundreds of interviews," David continued, "but none of them have shown me someone's heart like what I saw this morning." He paused, looked Jacob square in the eye. "You've got the job. If you want it." Jacob's throat tightened. Wait, really? You're not just saying that to be nice. I'm saying it because you showed the kind of courage and instinct money can't buy. We need people like you. And frankly, the kind of man who puts others first is the kind of man I want on my team. For a second, Jacob just stood there, speechless. Then he nodded, tears welling. Yes. I want it. Caleb came to the door, eyes wide. Dad? Jacob turned and knelt. We got the job, buddy. Caleb's grin lit up the hallway. Double scoop Friday? Jacob laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a long time. Double scoop everything. David smiled. See you Monday. As he walked away, Jacob stepped outside for a moment, letting the rain wash over his face. He had no suit. No pristine resume. Just a soaked shirt, tired eyes, and a story that proved who he really was. And this time, that was enough. As he stood there in the doorway, watching the man disappear down the hallway, Jacob felt something he hadn't in years: pride. Not because he'd been given a job, but because he'd earned respect. The kind that doesn't come from titles or resumes, but from action. He walked back inside, scooped Caleb into a hug, and whispered, "Today, we didn't just survive, we won." And this time, he believed it. Because maybe, just maybe, doing the right thing was the resume he never knew he needed. David didn't go straight back to work after leaving Jacob's apartment. He sat in his car, replaying the footage one more time. The way Jacob threw himself into danger without hesitation, it wasn't just heroic. It was human. And it reminded David of someone he hadn't thought about in years: his own father. His dad had been the kind of man who believed character showed when no one was watching. But that morning, someone was watching, and it changed everything. David drove back to the office, pulled into the LarkTech parking lot, and instead of heading straight into his meeting, he walked through the warehouse floor. He passed forklifts, humming conveyor belts, and the chatter of early morning employees. A few nodded, not used to seeing the owner on the floor at this hour. He found his HR manager, Claire, at her desk. "We're adding someone to the team today," David said. Claire looked up. "New hire?" "I don't see a file." "There's no file," David said. "I just met him. His name's Jacob, and he was supposed to be interviewed today." Claire blinked. "Supposed to be?" David handed her his phone and hit play. The color drained from her face as she watched Jacob save the girl. Holy. He's not hurt, is he? No. Shaken, but okay. And the girl's fine. Claire handed the phone back, still speechless. "I don't care what's on his resume," David said. "That's the kind of person I want leading a team here. But we've already filled that slot, unfill it." Claire blinked. "Make room," David continued. "We always say we're a company built on integrity. Time to act like it." Meanwhile, Jacob was back home, still trying to process what had happened. Caleb was in his room drawing, his favorite thing to do when life got too big to understand. Jacob sat by the window, staring at the rain, when his phone buzzed. It was a message. From Claire, LarkTech HR subject: "Welcome to the team." Body: "Jacob, we're thrilled to welcome you to the LarkTech family. Your official start date is Monday. Orientation details attached." He reread it twice, thinking it might be a mistake. But no, the sender was real. The PDF was legit. It was happening. He walked to Caleb's room and knocked softly. "Buddy?" "Yeah." Jacob opened the door. "You want to help me pick out a lunchbox?" Caleb spun around. "Wait, did you get the job?" Jacob smiled. "We start Monday." Caleb jumped into his arms, and for a moment, all the heaviness disappeared. But the story didn't stop there. Because 2 days later, something happened that Jacob never expected. He arrived at work a little early. He wanted to make a good impression. As he walked into the warehouse, people turned to look. Some smiled. Others whispered. One man even clapped. Jacob was confused, until he saw a TV screen mounted on the wall near reception. The video. His video. It was playing on a loop with the words, "This is who we hire." The clip had gone viral. David had posted it on the company's social media with a caption, "He missed his interview to save a life. We gave him the job anyway." Hashtag integrity matters. It exploded overnight. Hundreds of thousands of views. Thousands of comments. Hire of the year. This is the kind of person who should be running the world. Faith in humanity, restored. One local news outlet picked it up. Then another. By noon, Jacob's name was trending. He wasn't used to attention. It made him nervous. But David reassured him. "We didn't post it for likes," he said. "We posted it because the world needs to see what real leadership looks like." That day, Jacob was approached by nearly every employee in the building. Some thanked him. Some told him their kids had watched the video and cried. Others just gave him a nod, the kind that says, "I see you." But the most unexpected moment came during lunch. David stood up in the cafeteria, raised his coffee cup, and said, to Jacob, the man who reminded us that being a hero doesn't always require a cape. Sometimes, it just requires doing the right thing, even when no one's looking. Applause erupted. Jacob's ears burned. Later that night, he sat with Caleb, eating spaghetti off paper plates, and said, "Today was a lot." Caleb grinned. "You're famous." Jacob shook his head. "I'm just a guy trying to do the right thing." Caleb thought for a second. "Well, you're my hero." And that? That meant more than any headline. Later, Jacob received a handwritten note from the girl's mother. It read, "Thank you for saving my daughter. You didn't just give her a future, you reminded all of us that there's still good in the world." Jacob kept that note in his wallet, next to a photo of Caleb and his late wife, proof that doing the right thing never goes unseen. The days that followed were unlike anything Jacob had ever experienced. For once, his phone didn't ring with debt collectors, but with opportunities. Nonprofits, podcast hosts, even a local school asked if he'd come speak to their students. Everyone wanted to hear from the man who missed a job interview to save a life. But Jacob didn't feel like a hero. He felt grateful. Grateful that he had been in the right place. Grateful the little girl was okay. Grateful that, somehow, doing the right thing had finally opened a door instead of closing one. He stayed at Lark Tech, and quickly proved he was more than a viral moment. His work ethic was unmatched, and within weeks, he was promoted to team lead. But more than his work, it was his presence, his character, that made the biggest impact. People felt different around him. Safer. Inspired. At lunch, he often sat with the new hires, especially the ones who looked like they didn't fit in. He remembered what it felt like to be on the edge of losing everything. And at home, things changed, too. Caleb began smiling more. Sleeping better. His grades improved. He started drawing comics of Hero Dad, with a scribbly character in a thrift store shirt saving kids and fixing machines at work. One night, Caleb asked if they could frame the newspaper clipping with Jacob's photo on it. They did. Hung it right above the dining table, next to a sign that read, "Do the right thing, even if no one is watching." But Jacob knew, someone's always watching. And that's exactly why character matters. He didn't save that girl to impress anyone. He didn't pause to think about his resume or reputation. He acted because that's who he is. And maybe that's the point. We all have moments, little windows, where we get to choose what kind of person we are. No audience. No second takes. Just instinct. For Jacob, it cost him his interview. But it earned him something far more valuable: purpose. Trust. Redemption. A new chapter, not just in his career, but in his life. And the people around him? They started thinking differently, too. Warehouse managers rethought how they hired. HR departments added new interview questions about values and character. Even David, the company owner, changed company policy to include a humanity clause, guidelines that allowed exceptions for people who put others before profit. It was more than just one act. It sparked a ripple. Because when one man stands up and does the right thing, it gives others permission to do the same. And that's how change starts. Caleb once asked him, "Dad, what if you hadn't run into the street?" Jacob didn't answer right away. Instead, he knelt down and said, "Then someone else would have had to be brave. But I'm glad it was me." Because that moment helped him reclaim something he thought he lost the day his wife died, the belief that he still had something to offer the world. On weekends, Jacob started volunteering at a local youth center, helping teens who felt lost, unseen, stuck. He never talked about the video. He just listened, shared a smile, offered quiet strength. And slowly, people started calling him more than just the guy in the video. They called him mentor, leader, friend. One afternoon, he passed the same street where it all happened. The girl was outside, playing with chalk. When she saw him, she ran up, hugged his leg, and whispered, "Hi, hero." Jacob blinked back tears. "Hi, Lily." That was all he needed to keep going. Because he finally understood, doing the right thing doesn't end with one act. It begins a lifetime of choosing to care, even when it's hard. And for Jacob, that was a life worth living. Life doesn't always reward the right choice, but sometimes, it does. Jacob lost an interview, but gained purpose, respect, and pride. So when no one's watching, ask yourself, who do I want to be? If this story moved you, like the video, share your story in the comments, and subscribe for more. And send this to someone who needs a reminder, doing good is always worth it.